I'm not sure how to start this video. I have found something further in my analysis of the Bible that just blows things open, that allows me to demonstrate how the Bible is repetitively following a pattern. And the only way that this can happen is that there is, I don't know how, this sounds paranoid or something maybe. There's a secret society. There's people in the background that are creating stories on a template that are religions and mythologies. And there's something in the Bible that makes that incredibly clear, and it's in a numbering pattern that I've discovered that we can look at, and I'm going to show that in this video. When you see this, I promise you've never seen this before, and I haven't. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. Now, the first thing I want to say is that it's not possible for us to see this unless there's certain conditions met, and they were able to see it because they were doing something with the material that we are not doing with the material. And we can't see it because we're utilizing the material in a way that they weren't. We've got ourselves worked into where we can't see this. Okay, when the stories were first out, most people didn't read or write. Very few people did, so these were memorized and they were passed around word of mouth. And in doing so, and having them memorized to the degree that you could cite Genesis word by word accurately and teach that to somebody else who could do it accurately word by word, that it would travel that way. But you would have to have it memorized. You didn't read it. They didn't have books. They didn't have stuff like that. So they knew it at a very deep level. Now, what I'm going to suggest, the way to understand this code here is you would have to have it memorized, but then there's something I call it deeply memorized. I don't know what else to call it. That's not just having it memorized, but here's an example. I'm going to say a little child's poem here. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. We can memorize that. That's memorized. Now, deeply memorize it. How many times was twinkle said? Oh, this many times. How about star? Now, do that to Genesis. That's why we don't have access to it. Do you know how many times Sarai's name is repeated? 17. Wasn't it the 17th day? On the 17th day, the ark rested. There was doubling up. There's coding, numbering patterns going on in here that we're not going to see because we don't have them memorized. And in this case, what I'm going to suggest, though, is there's something that we can spot. It's the 7-3 grid doorway. It's like the start of the adventure, the 7-3. This 7-3 is going to appear at the beginning of every Abrahamic story. Before jumping right into that, though, what I want to explain is that what I'm going to be doing is using the computer to supplement us not having it memorized. That's what we have to do today. The only way I can get into this, or that we can get into this, is to know it at a deep memory level, or if you use the computer, it's got it at a deep memory level. All you have to do is bring it up in a Word document and ask the Genesis, how many times does this name repeat? How many times does that noun or verb or whatever? You can, anyway, so suddenly we have access to it. However, we have it very linearly. We don't have all of it at the same time. So they still had it deeper. We're at a deficit. We have to think through and try to imagine what they're doing and try to get into it and understand that we're at a deficit and that we're coming at it with really with mental deficiency, despite the fact that we might think we're big. We got problems. If we want to address this and get into it, we got to step back and go, phew. Let's drop everything we know, take a fresh look. Now, the 7s and the 3s, I'm going to be working with Stephen Langton's numbering system. When the stories were first made, there were not chapters and verses in there, yet they're following a sequence. They were memorized at one point in time, and we would have known that sequence because we would have had it deep memorized. Today, we don't know that sequence. We don't have it flowing in our mind in the right way that we need to understand these stories. Don't get me wrong. People can read them and say there's nothing to understand. Just read it like it is. You know what? Every bit of it is metaphor. It needs to be understood. So if you're treating it like a factual story, you're the carrier. You're standing outside the narrow gate. When you enter in with it, you begin to interpret all of it, every bit of it. So if you're not going to do that interpretation process, this is not your video at all. This is not for you. There's something deep at a deeper level in here. Not interpreting it is where the theist is, and the atheist and the theist compete over whether it happened or not. You know what? Both of you guys, there's something in there. There's something in there. It's an inward path. All right, I think the easiest way to do this is to stop explaining and just try to jump right into showing you what the numbers are. Make people go, okay, I see that pattern. What is it? It takes a while, so let's just find the pattern first. Here's where it starts. Do you see it's actually in chapter 2, Verse 3, and God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he rested from all the work God created and made. But what there is right here is a repeating of numbers. Seventh, seventh, and seventh is said 3 times. It's repeated 3 times right there. And if you will look, it's very bizarre. There's 2 creation stories. And this first one is like a doublet. And God said, and there was. And God said, and there was. And God said, and there was. So it should have actually ended right here, 3, and then chapter 2 should start right here where number 4 is. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the heavens and the earth, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth. So it goes off into a different variation that doesn't even sound the same. It's not using that doublet. And God said, and there was, and God said, there was. So right here, we've got the first clue that Langton is giving us. He's overlapping something here. It took me a long time to spot this, but if you look at it and just use this as a launching point, this is where we're going to find a repetition. Remember, Langton is doing the numbering for us. He's the one pointing to things. And if anybody thinks he's mixing it up, well, stick with it. You'll see he's pointing to us. He's not just making verses so that people can talk about it and study together. It's because it's not memorized anymore. He's pointing back into the area that if we had it memorized, where we would need to be. I'll just to say that at this point, and as we move along, you'll see that indeed that's the case. So right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 7 and I'm going to take a 3 and make them the same thing. Why the 3? That's an important one. 7 is, what is 7? Actually, if you put the 2 stories parallel, we have, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So 7 on a template replicates this time right here. But this needs to be understood too. This is each person starting out in life. The man and his wife were naked and not ashamed. That's your conscious and your inner self were uncovered from any of life's judgments. You had no shames. You had nothing covering you. You were ready to start life. You were naked, but that's spiritually naked. I know my daughter used to run around naked all the time till she was about 2. You couldn't keep clothes on her. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about I'm older in life and I got things that I've got hidden. You will never hear about them. That's being covered. You're no longer naked. This is a time in childhood where you're naked. 7 replicates that point in a pattern that's going to help us find our way in. Stick with it. It sounds goofy. What's the 3? The 3 comes from day 3. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place. And the dry land appeared, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth and gathered together the waters of the sea, and God saw that it was good. Now this replicates us being born. The waters under the heavens gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. We are now going to be residing on this dry land, but that's a perception place. And, okay, what do we move on to, though? And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good. This is the teaching of cause and effect. Metaphorically, this is what's going to grow from the garden of your earth that was just planted. You are going to have this is how the story is being set up. The earth is you, your life experience. And within that life experience, you're going to be experiencing life through cause and effect. Things that are planted produce trees, fruit trees. It doesn't say good or bad here. It could be bad fruit. This is indicating that whatever emerges from a judgment is going to continue to be a part of us. That's crucial to the teaching. That's how we live life. We become products of what we have judged. That's right here. 7 and 3. We're naked, unashamed, in the Garden of Eden. We have not judged yet anything in life, but we're going to live through cause and effect. Ready, set, go. Now, every story that is made later has to follow that 7-3 entryway right there. There's going to be a numbering system that becomes more complicated, but I want to show you something magical that happens with the 7-3. It is so hard to see, and again, Langton is pointing the way. What I'm going to do is drop from Genesis and say, okay, there's Genesis right there. Regardless of who the author was at that first point, We see where the 7 and 3 is derived from right there. That 7 and 3 actually goes on to gather up those other numbers when we get down into the gathering of the analog farm. But that's not this video. We're going to stick with the 7-3. So what I'm going to tell everybody else that makes a story is that when your story starts, you have to start it right up front with a 7-3 in there. You have to replicate that 7-3 in this story somehow, but don't make it obvious. Make it tricky. So here's what happens. Let's go to Exodus. If you do this at home, that's what you have to do. You have to download it from a source. I did from a free source on the internet. Ask me if you're interested. And then only use the King James Version for this number searching. Only the King James Version. Don't use the NRSV with all the notes and variations and things like that. The NRSV is for, you might read the other ones for interpreting, but here's for counting. Okay, let's look at Leviticus. And we've got the same nod. We get down to verse 7 and right off the bat, and the sons of Aaron. Oddly enough, that's it. Look, if you put Aaron's repeated exactly 80 times. That's fine. In Genesis, Isaac's name is repeated exactly 80 times. But if I put, and the sons of Aaron, this is where it became a little more nebulous. Bingo. That's only repeated exactly 3 times. They gave a nod to it right off the bat. Bam, I'm going to hit your requirements. And even down here, we've got order, which is said 7 times, and upon the fire 3 times. I won't look them all up. Just download it and go look. You'll see them. This is demonstrable. This is absolutely demonstrable. You got a 7 and then 3 being repeated right there. There's our 7-3 opening in the beginning of Leviticus. What else do we have? Okay, Deuteronomy. I don't have all of them. I skipped numbers there. I don't have all of them downloaded. I'm just going to pull up all the ones that I'm looking at here. I'll just jump right down into 7 down here. Turn you and take your journey. Now what we have is journey is repeated 8 times. It's in the red, but take your is repeated 3 times. Lebanon is repeated 3 times. So we've got within 7 right here, we've got 3 given the nod a number of times. And let's see. Yeah, these are, you can see that he did the same thing here. They're not complete sentences. He spread them out in order to make sure to put 7, to force 7 to be down here. He didn't need to do that. You can see sometimes he left long sentences, big ones in. Other places, like right here, he cut it down short to create another one to make sure that this one appeared down here in number 7. That's why he did that. He did not need to do that. But if you analyze why, you will see that there is a reason that he did so that is a little more subtle. It's at a deeper level. We got to dig for this one. He's winking at us now. All right, I don't need to keep going through it in a lot of detail. I think everybody's catching up by now. We get into Joshua right here. I'm going to jump into what I have. I'm going to get all of the verses, everything done in the Old Testament first. There's some other ones going on in here. But commanded thee, there it is, repeated exactly 3 times. Right hand, exactly 3 times. So within the story, he's making sure, whoever the author is making sure to provide the 7-3 link by, again, you would have to have this deeply memorized, so deeply memorized that even then it would be difficult. You'd be very clever to find this. We're using the computer, so we're just slap flat cheating. You know what? Verbal construction. This is what's happening in the stories. It depends on the author. Let's say that I myself was making one and I had like 4 or 5 different concepts that I wanted to convey. I'm hurt. I have to turn inward to face my fears. I'm going to have to understand what to do to heal them. It's now time to turn inward and to connect with my higher awareness. And that in that understanding right there, I've just put out 5 different concepts that could become 5 verses. I could, however, say, I'm an individual that has been hurt in life and I must turn inward and I have to understand what to do in order to face my memories. So I've really done in that story technique right there is just taken the 5 different concepts and put them into one sentence instead of breaking them out into individual blocky sentences. One of them sounds more like when we would talk conversationally. And if we had it memorized, we would know the concepts are there. We wouldn't have to have them numbered for us. What is Langton doing? When applicable, he's putting them in the right spot for us. And when it's not applicable, what he's doing is at least making sure that the 7-3 grid combination is in verse 3 or in verse 7. You would also however, have access to the knowledge of you know what to do, that you would know that you're supposed to navigate this. You would be working at trying to learn. You wouldn't just carry it around. All right, I don't have a ton of things from the Old Testament, but here is Job. Is Job following the same pattern? We get down to 7, and what we find in the number 7 here, I've got it highlighted green, and what is 3 with it? Walking. If we come over here and make sure that that's true. Yeah, walking is only repeated 3 times in the entire book of Job, and one of them occurs right here in verse number 7. You can also see that in this case, look at, there's a couple of sentences combined. There's concepts in here, but he's combining or separating out in order to force these, to make sure that these are right here in 7 and 3. He's pointing. He's pointing to us. We just have to know it. But his numbering pattern is meant to help us wonder, what is he doing? It causes us to look by seeing that there's discrepancies in the way that he numbers. But he's doing so because it's purposeful. It is not incorrect. It's the direction. It's the pathway. He's pointing the path through numbers. All right, let's jump to Matthew. This is a generational jump, isn't it? Going from the Old Testament to the New Testament. The Old Testament authors, Jewish authors, to essentially the Roman variants. The big change is happening. Christianity is emerging from Judaism. We get through the first chapter and it's not there. We get down into 7. What we have going on is actually a lineage. The lineage takes the place of Jesus' early life in a myth story. The life itself, now when Jesus was born in the Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. So this is really where the story of Jesus starts in chapter 2. And if we come down here to verse 7, bingo, that's where we find it. Verse 7, then Herod called privately to the wise men and inquired of them diligently. Diligently is the word we're looking for. If we knew that diligent is exactly 3 times, there's our nod in New Testament material. Okay. Mark is the oldest of the Gospels. It's not. I'm just going in order here, though. It doesn't matter. Look, we got number 3. Voice is repeated only 7 times. So we got 3 and a 7 link up right there. We get down to 7. What do we have? And preach, saying, there cometh one. There cometh one. There cometh one is repeated exactly 3 times. 7-3 nod. We have the exact same pattern occurring hundreds of years after the original stories, perhaps 1,000 years after. There is something in the background that is absolutely in place, and we don't know the material well enough. All right, let's move on to Luke. That lineage is not going to be there. We jump right into the story. So we get down to verse number 7. What do we have? Verse number 7, and they had no child because Elizabeth was barren. Barren 3 times. Or nod to the 3-7 at the beginning of the story. This is our entry point. This is our entry point. Look at, that's not a complete sentence, not a complete sentence, not a complete sentence. Again, why is he doing this? Why is this one so broke out? Fine, the other one's not. Sometimes big blocks, sometimes not big blocks. There's a method to the madness. The 7-3 entry point. We don't see it. We don't know it well enough. John's actually becomes incredibly dense and very thick. It is so highly detailed. You can see an evolution in the way that they're processing these stories. We get down to 7, though. Here we have 7. The same came. These were tricky to find. It took me a long time to find those ones. I thought there were nouns and verbs. I could not find the link. The same came. 3 times. The matrix emerges. All men. 7. All men. All men 7 times. Yeah, you don't find those things without... Man, it takes so much work to do this. You can see what I'm doing here, and that we don't have it almost takes like a quantum way that it works in your mind. You have to know all of this at once. I'm just targeting it on little bits and pieces and fumbling through. So what I'm doing is very cumbersome, but there's our 7 and 3. 7, same came right in John. Let's move on. All right, we get into Acts. And the first thing we notice right off the bat, we've got the same thing happening where he's breaking up the verses by concepts. We're going to find things here like 3 is going to have a 7 in it. Kingdom of God is repeated 7 times in the book of Acts. And one of those occurrences on verse 3. We get down to 7, and what we're going to find, 7 seasons is repeated 3 times. Let's make sure that's right. There we have it, seasons, 7 and 3. So we have a repetitive nod going on in everything authored in Abrahamic material. These are not random stories. They're very structured from somebody who knows something that they're not telling us, but that we have the ability to find. All right, I'm going to jump to Revelation. I know the video can go on. I want to move around some other places. And I'm going to show you something here. What I see is if I get down to 7, I've really struggled. Even so is repeated 3 times. That's the only thing I could find. And I'm like, boy, that's a stretch. But if I go up here and look through 3, I find that 3, blessed. Right off the bat, blessed is repeated exactly 7 times. Yeah, exactly 7 times throughout the entire book of Revelation. So they put the 7 and the 3 here. And there's a prophecy in 7. It almost looks to me like perhaps there's this idea that you can have it on verse 7, something repeated 3 times, or that you could have it on verse 3, and there's something in there very specifically repeated 7 times. But that is maintaining this code pattern. It is ancient code. If you look at it and go, I don't get it, that's just weird as hell. They're passing around stories, and this is their code. What you're looking at is their, man, I don't know, their early version of, I don't know, DOS. Older than that, it's all mental. All right, what I'm going to do is stick it inside of Abrahamic material, however, get outside of the Bible. This is Susanna. This is an apocryphal work. It's very short. There's 1 through, let me get down to the bottom here. 64 verses in length is all it is. It's a very short work. It's actually a fun piece. I've done a video on it. It in the Garden of Eden, when Eve partakes of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil instead of the tree of life, this would be an example of somebody consuming from the tree of life instead of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But we get down into it, and what do we see? In verse number 3, we see daughter is repeated 7 times. Law is repeated 3 times. We're talking about through this short document here. We get down into 7. What we're going to find is that went is repeated 3 times, and husband is repeated 3 times, and walk is repeated 3 times. There's 3 words in there that are repeated 3 times. This is a very short piece. This one is actually, it almost looks like it's I don't know, like there's a school someplace, and this is somebody's theme paper. Here, put something together that follows all these rules. And they're doing it. They're repeating the words an exact amount of time in a grid. I called it a matrix earlier. It is. It's a verbal matrix that we're seeing here. That is their code. And somebody's being taught this, even outside. It's a bigger school than what we know. There's more teachings out there than what we know that's following a pattern that we are carrying, but that we don't see it because we don't know it well enough and we don't know to examine it in this manner. All right, let's go to the Gnostic material. This is something going on, I'm telling you. Watch and see. They knew something that we do not. They definitely did. If we get down into verse 3, we're going to find that that fish has been repeated 7 times. Poverty is repeated 3 times. These are sequencing in a different pattern. I'm not going to get into it because it'll make it too big. I just want to point out the 3s and the 7 combos. Don't worry about these other numbers. It gets deeper and deeper. We get down to 7, what do we find? This one is almost grade school simple. We get down to 7 and we're going to see Jesus said, "Blessed is the lion which becomes the man when consumed by man, and cursed is the man whom the lion consumes, then the lion becomes man." Lion is repeated 3 times right here, and if you were to look, it doesn't even exist anywhere else in the entire gospel. So we've got our 7-3 nod right here that's kind of in your face. Consumed is a little more spread out. Let's see. Let's make sure. Yeah, okay, we've got our consumed, consumes something of that nature right there 3 times by man. So we have our 7-3 nod that's right there, and this is in Gnostic material. So they're following a very known pattern. You know, whether it's meant to be the religious or not, there is something in the background that is going on that is shared by many people that is actually the proper way. The religion is a carrier case. The various religions are carrying the same template, if we can find it. All right, how well are you making out with this material? We've got the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish. It's called the 7 tablets of creation. The 7 tablets of creation. We've got 7 days of creation. What happens? How many times is 7 repeated in here? 3 times. I'm not going to get deeper into it. The 7-3 grid precedes Judaism. But then it becomes very prevalent, so much so that you have to know that it's known. And it's been tried to, let's shut these down, let's shut them down. And then I think that the reason that they're safe is because we just don't know how to look at them. We don't examine them. We don't see the patterns. We don't sit down and take the time. And you see what I've done here. Short of doing this, you're not going to find it. You cannot know that they're there. We are so far removed from what they were doing that we don't have access to this material. We think we do. Well, all we have access to is the wrapping paper. All people are doing is looking at the pictures on the outside going, that's it. They don't know what's inside of it. They haven't entered the narrow gate. They haven't opened the ark. They haven't rent the curtain between the holy and the holy of holies. There's many metaphorical ways that are going to tell us that we have to turn inward with this material. And until you do so, you're going to be a theist or an atheist. You're not going to know that there's a pathway that it's a middle path. There's something different that goes on that is an individual path. Anyway, in this video, I just wanted to show that 3-7 and the 7-3 connections, and that everybody from in the future, when you read that, sometimes you might see something in 7 where it might have the word 3 or the word 7 or something like that in there. Or in 3, it might have 7 or 3 or something. You might see those. But know this, that even if you don't see that in the background, there is a word or phrase in there repeated the amount of times to fit the criteria anyway. It is just so hidden and so cleverly done that we don't really understand it. We don't see it. But if we examine it, we will find the patterns, and then you analyze it and realize what's going on. There's an inward path that is known by somebody. Look at that. How come we don't know that? Who knows that? And it looks like every once in a while it gets out of the bag. Gnostics, let's go. Oh, you shut that down. Quell that up. We don't need that out. But it's out there. I think that this knowledge is very much prevalent in the background. Somewhere. It is known by somebody who is sitting back going, yeah, we can't let humanity know. We can't. I'm looking at religion today, though, and what's happening in humanity and going, are you serious? We need to wake up. We need to see what the hell's going on planet Earth. Humanity's on a course of self-destruction, thinking itself wise. We're operating through material that we don't understand what it really is. And there's so many channels now, the theist and atheist ones that are going back that are just, they're even more, I can't gain any traction. Nobody wants to know what's really there. This is just so frustrating. All right, well, that's it for this video. I wanted to cover that 7-3 start. That not only is it there in Genesis, it's, as far as I know, there might be places you don't find it. I don't know. I have not looked everywhere. But it is so prevalent, you're like, okay, this is that pattern I'm talking about, guys. Do you see that template? And sometimes it's not very visible. It's not right in your face. You have to do a little figuring out to get to it. That's what they were doing. We are not. We think we're smart. We are not. Preachers, you don't know the Bible. You know the wrapping paper. All right, everyone. Hope the video was fun and interesting. See you in the next one.